Have you ever heard of a soldier who fought a war for 30 years after it had already ended? This isn't the plot of a Hollywood movie. It's the incredible true story of Hiroo Onoda, an Imperial Japanese Army intelligence officer whose unwavering loyalty and dedication to his duty led him to spend nearly 3 decades hidden in the dense jungles of a remote island, completely unaware that World War II was over. His tale is one of extreme survival, unyielding principle, and a profound sense of honor that seems almost incomprehensible in the modern world. It is a story that forces us to question the nature of belief, the power of orders, and the very definition of duty. The legend of Hiroo Onoda begins in the final, desperate years of the Second World War, a conflict that would define his entire existence long after the last shots were fired. In December 1944, as the tide of the war in the Pacific was turning decisively against Japan, a 22-year-old second lieutenant named Hiroo Onoda was dispatched to a small, strategic speck of land in the Philippines' Lubang Island. He was a graduate of the Nakano School, an elite training facility for military intelligence and unconventional warfare. The skills he learned, their guerrilla tactics, sabotage, intelligence gathering, and, most importantly, the art of survival were about to be tested beyond imagination. His mission was clear and absolute: to disrupt enemy operations, to destroy the island's airfield and peer to prevent their use by invading American forces, and to hold the island at all costs. Just before his departure, his division commander, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, gave him a final, fateful order that would echo through the next 30 years of his life. He was told, under no circumstances, to surrender or to take his own life. The order was unequivocal. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. Until then, so long as you have one soldier, you are to continue to lead him. You may have to live on coconuts. If that's the case, live on coconuts. Under no circumstances are you to give up your life voluntarily. Onoda accepted this command as his sacred duty, a pact he would honor with every fiber of his being, completely unaware that this vow would isolate him from the world for a generation. When Onoda arrived on Lubang Island, he found that the senior officers already stationed there outranked him and were not prepared for the kind of guerrilla campaign he was trained to lead. They prevented him from carrying out his orders to destroy the vital infrastructure, believing it would be needed when Japanese forces returned. Their failure to heed his warnings proved catastrophic. In February 1945, American forces landed on the island and quickly secured it. The Japanese garrison was swiftly defeated, and within days, most of the soldiers had been either killed or captured. Onoda, along with 3 other soldiers, Corp Private First Class Kensichi Kosuka and Private Yuchi Akasori, treated into the dense, mountainous jungle of the island's interior to begin the guerrilla war he was ordered to fight. They were now fugitives in a land that was no longer a battlefield, but they didn't know it. Just a few months later, in August 1945, after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan officially surrendered, bringing the Second World War to an end. For the rest of the world, peace had arrived. But for Onoda and his men, isolated in the jungle, the war was far from over. From their hidden camps deep within the jungle, Onoda and his small band of soldiers continued their mission with unwavering resolve. They were convinced that the leaflets dropped by planes announcing Japan's surrender were an elaborate enemy trick, a piece of psychological warfare designed to lure them out of hiding. They dismissed the newspapers, family photographs, and letters left for them as clever forgeries. To them, the war was still a brutal, ongoing reality. They viewed the local police and Filipino army patrols as enemy combatants and saw the island's farmers as collaborators. Their existence became a grueling cycle of survival and strategic harassment. They lived off the land, subsisting on a diet of bananas, coconuts, and other scavenged jungle fruits. For protein, they would periodically slaughter a local farmer's cow, a necessity they considered a legitimate act of war, the requisitioning of supplies from enemy-occupied territory. They meticulously maintained their Arisaka Type 99 rifles, keeping them in perfect working order and rationing their small supply of ammunition with extreme care. They moved to their base camp frequently to avoid detection, employing classic guerrilla tactics to conduct reconnaissance and occasional raids. This shadow war, fought only in their minds, was a deadly one. Over the course of their 3-decade-long ordeal, Onoda's group was involved in numerous skirmishes, resulting in the deaths of approximately 30. Filipino islanders and police officers, and cementing their status as dangerous phantoms in the eyes of the local population. The years turned into a decade, and then two. The small group of four slowly dwindled. In 1949, after 5 years in the jungle, Private Akatsu decided he had had enough. He slipped away from the group and, after 6 months of wandering alone, surrendered to Filipino forces in 1950. His debriefing confirmed to the outside world that Onoda and 2 others were still alive, still fighting. This prompted renewed efforts to find them, but Onoda's group believed Akatsu's surrender was a security breach and became even more cautious. Then, in May 1954, tragedy struck. During a clash with a search party, Corporal Shimada was shot in the leg and, after a prolonged gunfight, was killed. Now only 2 remained: Onoda and Private Kozuka. For another 18 years, the pair continued their phantom war. 2 loyal soldiers against the world. They listened to a small transistor radio, but they interpreted world events through the lens of their unwavering belief that Japan was still at war. The Korean War and the Vietnam War were, to them, clear signs that Japan was biding its time, waiting for the right moment to re-enter the global conflict. Their final partnership ended in October 1972, when Kozuka was killed by local police while he and Onoda were burning rice supplies harvested by farmers, an act they deemed sabotage. Onoda was now completely alone, but his resolve did not break. He vowed to continue the mission, to honor his orders, even if he was the last soldier left. The story of the lone Japanese soldier still fighting World War II had, by the 1970s, become something of a legend. Many people had tried and failed to find him. But in 1974, a young Japanese university dropout, an adventurer named Norio Suzuki, decided to take on the challenge. His personal quest was, as he put it, to find Lieutenant Onoda, Apenda, and the abominable snowman. In that order. Incredibly, after just 4 days of searching on Lubang Island, Suzuki found him. He stumbled upon Onoda in the jungle and, instead of treating him as a threat, approached him with respect and sincerity. "Onoda-san," he called out, "the Emperor and the people of Japan are worried about you." Obertudas, the 2 men formed an unlikely friendship. Suzuki patiently explained how the world had changed, that Japan had been a peaceful and prosperous nation for decades. Onoda listened, but he remained steadfast. The stories, the radio, the leaflets, they could all be lies. The only thing that could convince him to lay down his arms was a direct order from his superior officer. He would not surrender. He would only relinquish his duty if formally relieved by the man who had given him his original command. True to his word, Suzuki returned to Japan with a photograph of himself with Onoda, as proof of their encounter. He located Onoda's former commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, who was now an old man working in a bookstore. The Japanese government flew Taniguchi to Lubang Island. On March 9, 1974, in a clearing in the jungle, the 2 soldiers met again for the first time in 30 years. The aged major, dressed in a formal suit, stood before his subordinate, who was still clad in his tattered but functional Imperial Army uniform. Taniguchi read the formal order of surrender, officially relieving Second Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda of all his duties. At that moment, for Onoda, the war was finally over. He broke down and wept. He presented his samurai sword to the commander of the Philippine Air Force Base on the island as a gesture of formal surrender. The President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos, granted him a full pardon for the crimes he had committed while believing he was still at war, understanding the extraordinary circumstances of his actions. A few days later, Hiroo Onoda returned to Japan. He stepped off the plane wearing his 30-year-old uniform, a living relic from a bygone era. He was greeted as a hero, a symbol of pre-war Japan's dedication, honor, and loyalty. However, he found himself a stranger in his own land. The pacifist, consumerist Japan of the 1970s was a world away from the militaristic, imperial nation he had left behind. He struggled to adapt to this new reality, which he viewed as having lost its traditional values. He eventually moved to Brazil, where he became a cattle rancher, finding a new sense of purpose in taming a different kind of wilderness. He later returned to Japan to establish nature camps for children, hoping to pass on the survival skills and resilience he had learned during his incredible 29-year ordeal. Hiroo Onoda's story is not just a footnote in the history of World War II. It is a profound and deeply human saga. It's a testament to the power of a single command, the strength of the human will to survive, and the unyielding grip of duty. His 30-year war in the jungle of Lubang Island stands as one of the most extreme examples of loyalty and perseverance ever recorded, forcing us to reflect on the lines we draw between honor and obsession, and between duty and delusion.